Chapter 7 of Daniel is a vision that was given to Daniel, not to Nebuchadnezzar, not to Belshazzar, not to. It was a vision given to Daniel. And Daniel was told repeatedly, read all 12 chapters, Daniel was told repeatedly that this is about the time of the end. The lion had wings. The wings are important because lions don't have wings. So the fact that in the vision given to Daniel, the lion had wings, and they were eagle's wings, is symbolic, it's meaningful, it has some meaning. Of these three beasts or animals, which of them is strongest? Come on, lion, bear, or leopard? No. The lion is. The lion can kill the bear and the leopard. But if he has his wings pulled off and his heart pulled out, he's not the strong animal anymore. There's a progression here. The bear does not raise himself up on one side. He does not have 3 ribs in his mouth until the lion is rendered helpless and indefensible and harmless. So the bear rises when the lion weakens. And then there is the leopard. We're going to put him higher. Why do we put him higher? How many wings does he have? Come on. 4 heads and 4 wings. And he moves swiftly, it says. So the lion is number 1, but something is going on, going down. Something is happening that is lifting these other earthly powers being represented prophetically here. They are rising, but only as the lion weakens and falls by the way. Now, we're going to meet these 3 critters again and this one again over here in Revelation 13. Out of the sea. The 4 winds of heaven strove upon the great sea, and I saw 4 great beasts, diverse one from another, that came out of the sea. Out of the sea. When we get to Revelation 13, we see a beast, and he's rising out of the sea. Is that important? It's so important that you have to get to Revelation 17 to get light here and light here. The angel says to John in Revelation 17, the waters represent, come on, tell me what the waters represent. Peoples, nations, tongues. So the origin of these beasts is out of the sea, multinational, multicultural, The origin of the beast in Revelation 13, I stood on the sand of the sea and I saw a beast rise out of the sea, John says. And he was leopard, he was bear, and he was lion. He had the body of the leopard, the feet of the bear, and the mouth of the lion. 1, 2, 3. Jesus said, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. What's going on here? We need to understand what's going on here. The beast is diverse from these. He doesn't look like the kind of beast we meet at the zoo. But these are the same beasts, but when we see this order, this arrangement, there's going to be an image to the first beast. The first beast receives a deadly wound. His deadly wound is going to be healed, and all the world will stand in amazement. And it is the image of this beast that is going to cause the whole world to bow down. We'll talk about that another time, but this is striking. This arrangement is followed by this arrangement. The leopard is going to become the strong beast of the earthly critters. The leopard is going to become number one. Now that's carried out in the symbolism that we gave you. And if there are those here today who never received a copy, we'll give you one for the asking. Lion, bear, leopard, and beast. Gold, silver, brass, iron. What happens is that the leopard is represented by the brass in the metallic image. Brass and iron are represented in Daniel 4 as a band around, a choking band around the great tree, which is cut down. That would be the lion with eagle's wings, cut down. And what we're going to see, I believe, with everything in me, what we're going to see real soon now is China is going to come to the forefront as the strongest financially adept power on the planet. China made an announcement 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 3 to 6 months ago, China made an announcement to the World Bank, to the International Monetary Fund, and to the world, though it's not been given much credence and much press time in the U.S. China made an announcement that she was going to back her currency, the yuan, with gold. And China, for the last 6 to 12 months, has been buying hundreds of tons of gold. What for? To back up the currency. Now, who was it you telling me, Simeon, that's in the press that the Chinese loaned 20% of their gold?
20 tons.
20 tons. Well, that's not 20%, but that's still a lot of dough.
Yeah.
And tell me who the Chinese loaned this gold to?
The U.S.
The U.S. To back up our currency so that we can tell the world we have a gold-backed currency. We have an asset-backed currency. We do not in reality. We soon will by the games that banks and governments play. We soon will have a gold-backed currency. The question is, how long will it last? How strong will it be? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see these things. I'm in John chapter 5. I'm going to shift gears for a moment here. I'm in John chapter 5. I want you to find a Bible. If you need one, I have one here you can borrow. I'm in verse 1. After this, there was a feast of the Jews. Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is at Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool which is called in the Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches. Evidently, this is a structure that the Romans built. They were famous for their architecture and building skills. In these 5 porches lay a great multitude, verse 3, of impotent folk, blind, lame, they couldn't walk, they were halt, they were withered. They were waiting for the moving of the water. Now, this is the pool at Bethesda. And you have a great crowd of impotent people, it says, people who are poor in health and poor. And they have positioned themselves inside these 5 porches. And they're as close to the pool as they can get, waiting for something to happen. Let's see what they're waiting for. in these, verse 3 and 4, in these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, blind, halt, withered, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. And whoever was first after the troubling of the water stepped in was made whole of whatever disease he had. Religion, wherever we are on the planet, religion is almost always full of superstition. Now tell me what superstition is. You believe something that is what? The medical community has said for decades that 80+% of the diseases that plague people originate in the... Ellen White is on record as saying most of the diseases that afflict man originate in the mind. Now there is superstition big time in these verses right here. They're waiting to see the water wiggle. It might happen today. It might not happen for a month. It might not happen for a year. But if you're there and you are first one to roll over and fall in the pool or stand up or whatever, if you're the first one in the water, you are guaranteed what? Healing. Do you believe that there was something to back up this superstitious thought? Can you agree that there are people who got into that pool first and rejoiced? We have an expression, mind over what? Mind over matter. A certain man was there, verse 5, right, which had an infirmity for 38 years. Doesn't say exactly what his infirmity was, but I assume he was helpless. He was paralyzed or thereabouts. And verse 6 says, when Jesus saw him lying and knew that he had been a long time in that condition, he said to him, would you be made whole? Now, the description in the first 4 or 5 verses here is of a whole host of people who are waiting for the water to wiggle. And Jesus sees all of this, and look, Jesus could have said, why are you folk deceived? Why do you believe superstition? He could have done that, but he didn't do that. He didn't preach a sermon to all of those impotent people. He didn't even preach a sermon to the man who was lame who became the subject. He sees a man among the crowd of impotent folk, and Jesus chooses him and says, would you like to be made whole? Would you be made whole? And the man had an excuse ready. He said, there's nobody here to help me get down into the water. So did Jesus say, well, I'm going to come stand by you, and when the water wiggles, I'm going to help you get down? Is that the story? Is that the record? No. How many people do you think are going to be saved into heaven because they believed in superstition?
It's not a salvation issue.
Not a single one.
Well, it is a salvation issue because everybody believes it is. And if you believe it, that's the truth for you. That's what you believe. Now this incident here, Jesus says, would you be made whole? I don't have anybody to help me get down into the water. And let's see the next verse. Let's see how Jesus responds to this. The impotent man answered, verse 7, Sir, I have no man when the water is troubled to put me in the pool, but while I'm coming, somebody beats me into the pool. So Jesus said, rise, get up. He's lying down. He's paralyzed. Get up. Stand up. Pick up your bed and walk. And immediately the man stood to his feet, picked up his cot, his blanket, his whatever it was he was lying on there, and Now, if you keep reading a few more verses, where did Jesus go?
In the multitude.
Where did Jesus go? He got out of the crowd. So there were some good church members there. Verse 10, the Jews therefore said to him that was cured, it's the Sabbath. It's not lawful for you to carry your bed. Is the Sabbath superstition? Is the way some people relate to it superstition? No. If you believe something is true that's not true, that's superstition. It was the Sabbath. And it's true there's a command that you're not supposed to carry burdens on the Sabbath. But this was different. Tell me what was different about it. What made a difference? Why was it okay for Jesus to command this man to pick up his bed on the Sabbath day and carry a burden?
Because that's not a burden.
There was a burden in all of this. And the burden is the disease and the sickness and the aging and the hurting and all of these. That's the burden. That's what God promises from Genesis to Revelation to take care of in the last end. No more sickness, no more dying, no more hurting, no more pain, no more. And what we have here are people, good church members, probably paid tithe. The Jews said, it's the Sabbath day, it's not lawful for you to carry your bed. And here's what he answered in verse 11. He that made me whole, the same told me, take up your bed and walk. So they've got to turn their attention away from this man who is just to, who told you that? Where is he? If you keep reading, as soon as they found out it was Jesus, they said, we want to baptize him and get him into our church. They went about to kill him. You know, there are things in the Bible, I tell you truthfully, there are things in the Bible that I just cannot get my head around. Where is the rejoicing? Where is the praising God? Where is, it's the Sabbath. Now, is it any wonder that so much of the Christian world wants nothing to do with the Sabbath? Because of the way it's abused and used. And I think we have to be very careful. Not just because we're Adventists and Sabbatarians. I think we have to be very careful. I had a friend in high school in Mobile. It's my senior year. And I really liked this guy. He was a very outgoing personality. And he had a good sense of humor. He was nobody's fool. He was not an idiot. And he smoked like a furnace. And I found it my duty to straighten him out. So I harassed him every time I saw him. You better give up those cigarettes. If you don't, God's going to get you. Was that true? Well, what does God going to get you mean? You're going to pay for your sins. God will see to it you're going to pay for your sins. Is that true? According to the Bible, that's true. Jesus said, whatever people have done, whatever they have said, whatever, they're going to pay for in the judgment. We have to be very careful when we see people doing things that we know they shouldn't. They probably know they shouldn't as well. But they don't know how to get rid of sin in their lives. You know what Jesus said to the lame and impotent man when he bumped into him in the Walmart? He said, "You better go and sin no more, lest the worst thing come upon you." Never did tell us what the sin was. We had an island way out in the Pacific, all by itself in the Pacific. Meaningful population. We here in the office had to decide how we're going to get the books to those people way out in nowhere in the middle of the Pacific. So we worked it out with a shipper that we would ship so many cases of books and so much. And then we bought overseas plane tickets for 3 persons who would volunteer to go there, meet the books, and give them out all over the island. Get on the plane and fly to the next destination. Well, the church leaders on the island found out that we were sending the books. And they went to the authorities before our people got off the plane. And they said, "Our books have arrived. We'd like to pick them up, please." Our books have arrived, and we'd like to pick them up. So they did so. They had 1 or 2 pickup trucks loaded with our books. And they took them to the Adventist mission compound on that island, piled them in a pile, poured gasoline all over them, and burnt them up. Just before our volunteers, who at considerable expense had flown halfway around the world. Now, there are several ways, I guess, you could look at this, think about this, talk about this, measure this. I could take it out on the Lord. I could say, "Lord, you could have prevented that. We're going to stop this. We're not going to do any more. If you want to allow this kind of thing to go on, so be it. We're going to allow it to go on too." We could have laid the blame on God. Do people ever put the blame on God? We could have become very heated and angered, and we could have hired lawyers to sue in the courts of law for damages. There are all kinds of things that we could have done to respond to this injustice. Our books have come, and we've come to pick them up. Outright lie. It was not their property. It was the property of God, but it was the property of people like you who gave us offerings to print those books and ship them. They were robbing you and me and who knows, thousands of others. They were robbing us, and they were robbing the people in the middle of the Pacific Ocean who would have read some of that literature, and I believe responded. But they put it in a pile and poured gasoline all over it and lit the fire. How would you respond to that? So here's my question. What is there about religion that causes people to think they can act like the devil? Case in point, John 5. What is there about religion that leads human beings to believe, think, and reason that they can act like the devil with God's approval? And how can we be sure we're not behaving the same way? Well, here's my reasoning. My reasoning is if I saw somebody lame for 38 years and I see them get up and walk, I would be praising God. I cannot understand how anyone, especially in church, could see, think, or do differently. It's beyond me. I don't understand it. We were working in another country, and I won't say where, but Puerto Rico. the conference president had sent word that I was invited for dinner. I was the guest speaker, and I was invited for dinner at his home. Of course I went. I attended this. I kept the invitation. And we visited around the table for a couple of hours. And he said, Brother Wheeling, he said, you know, the powers that be have tried to block your visit here. But I want nothing to do with that spirit. Yeah, there was a conference president saying, I'm not going to put up with this. This is not Christ-like. This is not right, true, just. So we have to be careful that because some preachers in whatever era, some preachers hate Jesus or hate what Jesus represents or hate what we represent, just because some are bad eggs doesn't mean they're all bad eggs. We have to be careful that we're not going around pinning the tail on the donkey and abusing all of those preachers, because they're not all rotten, they're not all bad. If you took the ratio of the 12 disciples, what percentage was rotten? Well, what percent of that is 1 out of 12? About 8%? Doesn't matter.
8.5.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Jesus allowed Judas to come into the 12, walk with the 12. As a matter of fact, Jesus said, you know, we're going to be hiking a long way, and gold and silver is heavy, and I'm not going to hang that on my belt. Judas, how about you carrying the bag? Do you think Jesus didn't know what was in Judas's heart? Do you think Jesus didn't know what was going on? Why would he give the bag to Judas? He should have said, Peter, come here. You've got a sword, and I know you know how to use it. Let's hang the bag on your belt. And the lesson that I draw from this is that God gives people an opportunity down here to choose which spirit, to choose which way. And just because some go wrong doesn't mean we have to go wrong. Doesn't mean, Jesus says, you don't repay unkindness with unkindness. In the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation, there is a specific period of time allotted to this arrangement. 3.5 years, 1,260 days, 42 months. All of these are the same time period represented. There's a specific prophetic period of time allotted to this arrangement. I can only guess at what the time period prophetically is allotted to this arrangement. And this arrangement is the one you and I are about, and the rest of the world are about to be dragged into. We're about to be thrown into the middle of things so bizarre, so strange, so different, that we will scarcely believe what we're seeing and hearing. And we're that close to it. That close. The only thing I can get to wonder about in Daniel and Revelation, Daniel 7 and Revelation 13, the only thing I can wonder about is the 2300 evening morning. Because the angel in Daniel 8 poses the question, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily, to give both the host and the saints to be trodden underfoot. They're trodden underfoot by the beast system. And the only thing that I can reason is that the 2300 evening, morning, 2300 days and would contain the 3.5 years. So if I subtract 3.5 from 2,300 days, which is about 6 1/3 years, if I'm doing any math that has meaning or truth to it, then this is about, if I take 3.5 from 6 1/3, what does that leave? Come on, brainy persons, tell me. About 2.5 years, whatever it is. 2 to 3 years plus or minus. Don't have the exact number of days. Here we have the exact number of days. This is what I want us to see. This is just before us. The lion having his eagle's wings plucked. The United States of America, the most powerful nation in the history of mankind, is about to become a third world country. Not first. It's going to be number one. We're going to be number one at the first of this process, at the beginning of this process. We're number one. But as time goes on, we become number 3 down here. Third world, fourth world, whatever that's going to represent. And Ellen White puts this in these terms. America will become foremost. That means number 1. I believe in the number 3 position. America will be foremost in stretching her hands across the gulf to grasp the hand of spiritualism in the old world and to call for the mark. The United States is going to reach out to Romanism in the old world. Now, why would we do that? If America goes bankrupt in worldly terms, and there are vaults that belong to the Vatican that are filled with gold, would we want to have that gold on our side? Would we like to have that wealth for us? You'll check that out in Revelation 17. Woman decked with pearls and gold and wine and all the things, and the kings of the earth.
That's what I think, at least portion of it.
Yes. The kings of the earth bow down. Well, we're about to see, look, folk, this is what I believe. I believe we're on the verge of this portion of this revelation. And I believe that we have a window of opportunity just ahead of us. And we have to give every book we can, print every book we can, go every mile we can, as quickly as possible. We may have 2 to 3 years in here. May have 2 to 3 years by my estimation. And that's all it is estimation. 2 to 3 years in which we do the work with all haste, with every dollar we can muster that God gives us. We need to print millions of books and sow the seed. I'm going to close on that because seed is what Jesus said is the secret to understanding his parables. Sowing good seed. Sowed seed and went away on a long journey, and he came back to see what sprouted, what lived, what produced, what brought forth. And we have a rich history in this little ministry. We have a rich history. We were formed and accepted by the U.S. government in 1980. So 1980 is 20 and 18, that's 38 years. 38 years. Most of the folk who attended our seminars and supported the book work are passed away. The larger proportion of our friends in 38 years have passed away. If time lasts another 10 years, and I have serious reservations about that, then I'll be joining them. And some of us here will be joining them. This is our window. This is it. If we have some responsibility before God, if we have some commission, some command before God to do the work, sow the seed, this is our window. This is it. Father in heaven, thank you for the beautiful roses. Thank you for the things that cover up the thorns of this life. And remind us that heaven is where the flowers never fade. That's what your servant has promised. Where the flowers will never fade. We're not there yet, but we thank you for these beautiful flowers today and what they represent. And we thank you for the mothers who are here and what they represent and who they represent. We thank you for every blessing, every promise. We thank you for these favors in Jesus' name. Amen.